So we're going to do an NLP call today. Those of you who know me know that I have quite an extensive NLP background. That's some of the stuff that we're coaching on right now. So it's out-of-the-box coaching. I'm doing a great call with actually Remax Hallmark at 12 o'clock today, where I'm going to share some of our craziest out-of-the-box ideas for everybody. So it's going to be really awesome. I think one of the things that, as we kick this off, the reason a lot of people ask me a few questions, and I get this a lot. You heard yesterday we interviewed one of our coaching clients, Chris, and he's having his best month ever. He's at 300,000 GCI. And that was a record-breaking month he's had. Some of our other teams are producing 40, 50, 60 transactions, and we've had a lot of success. I think the out-of-the-box ideas is one of the reasons why, for sure. That's one of them. But the other thing is I mix a lot of NLP into my coaching. And people who know me know I've just been through a lot of stuff in my own personal life, which makes it, super great. But also, at the same token, NLP has been kind of something that's saved me, I think, a long time ago. And I have an NLP coach myself, and a lot of the stuff you're going to hear in the next few minutes is going to be based on some of the stuff that he's shared with me. And I am cracking. Crackling. Okay, that could be your line. So I'm going to say dial back in, because if you're hearing crackling, it could be your line. I'm hearing no crackling on my end. If somebody else is hearing crackling, let me know. Dakota, I know you're on the call as well. We've got a lot of people on these calls. So Dakota, if you're hearing me crackle, let me know and I'll hang up and dial back in. Otherwise, I think I'm okay. It could be just your line if you're hearing crackling. But anyway, the point is that NLP is just a process of taking other people's, if you really want to dumbify it down, NLP is taking other people's successes and just saying, if somebody else can be successful, so can you. And so even in this market and this time, if you're seeing other people achieving success, it has a lot to do with the fact of NLP takes your brain and says something's happening in your world where if you're not experiencing success, it's generally because of the way you're thinking or the way that your patterns are, and there's something interrupting you. And that's really the truth of what NLP is, if you want to dumbify it. And I don't like to dumbify NLP. I just don't like to make it more complex. So that's one of the things that we look at with NLP. And I'll give you an example that my coach shared with me and said, we see a lot of, you'll hear somebody like my family immigrated over, or if you have my grandparents, I should say, immigrated over. And if you look at them, or if you look at some of these amazing, like Italian families and Polish families and, Indian and Asian, all these amazing people who are coming over to our countries, and you see them and they come over to our countries and they go, one person will look and go, my God, it's so tough to survive, or it's so tough to do this. Sorry, that's not me. I'm going to mute whoever that is. Hang on. Somebody has squeezed in here. Okay. So when you see that happen, and we talk about this with my coach all the time, he says, when you see immigrants come over, they have this amazing attitude. Sorry, I'm just going to mute everyone still. Hang on. We got a lot of people on this call, so hang on. There we go. Woo! There we go. Sometimes it's hard to grab everybody. All right, there we go. So anyway, what you see is a lot of people who come over to the country, and they have this different attitude. And what they do is they come in, they see prosperous, they see opportunity, and they go, oh my God, there's everything here. It's just unbelievable, the opportunities that you can see. And then you have somebody who's lived here our whole life, and they're going, oh, it's so tough. Our country makes it impossible for small business owners. But yet, it's a different perception. So what ends up happening is that you can see the success rate, and it's true, a lot of immigrants who come over and create their own businesses, they see the vision of our country as this beautiful place of opportunity, whether it's Canada or United States. And then we see some of the people who've grown up in the country their whole life who are sitting there going, no, it's impossible. I can't do it. It's really, really difficult. So you can see a lot of that stuff happen. And a lot of that is the mindset. And one of the things that I really focus a lot on, okay, good. Everything sounds good on the line. One of the things I focus a lot on is if your brain has an idea or if it has a concept, you can do it. And people always ask me, they go, how are you so energetic, and how are you so positive, or how do you succeed in terrible times? And I'm like, if anybody knows me, they know on the right side of my arm, I have a giant tattoo of a lotus flower. And I got that lotus flower because I have been through a shit ton of stuff. I mean, I don't even share a quarter of what I've been through, even now in a pandemic. My competition chomps at me. They listen to these calls. We're posting them for free for the first time. We've opened them up to everybody so you can experience it. But I'm even getting, people transcribing my calls, and they're, publishing it as their own stuff. I mean, there's no stop to the kind of kicks that I've had. And I'm going, on my right arm, I have a lotus flower. And I'm okay with all that. Sometimes I crack, sometimes I don't. I'm not perfect, but I have a big lotus flower on my arm. And the lotus flower, anybody that knows that, is it only grows in the worst conditions. It's a beautiful flower that it has to be murky, terrible, gross water, really tough conditions. And somehow the lotus flower just rises out of it every time. And it's the most fascinating flower. And that's why Buddhists, and you'll see the lotus flower around a lot. It's a very big symbol of strength. And that's one of the things that NLP has done for me. So not to go on too much about that, but I truly believe that your mindset and how you program it and how you wake up is really important. So here's the thing. How do you kind of get into your own mind? Here's what I want you guys to think about and how you begin to get into your mind and learn to have a little bit of control over it. Okay, I want to give you clear content. People get caught up in what we call patterns. And my coach has always taught me that Aristotle has this great thing, he says that we're repeatedly what we do. So yeah, if you eat crappy food, let's use that as an example. If you eat crappy food all the time, you're going to have a physical body that is not in the best shape. I mean, that's something that you repeatedly do. I've lived it. I personally own it. I have the pictures to prove it. I can prove if you eat really shitty, crappy food, the amount of exercise you do probably won't matter because it's not going to be a great body. Now, I'm on the flip side of that. I'm an Ironman. I work out 16 hours a week. I'm really dedicated to it. You're not going to see any shit food in my house. It's just, well, okay, wait a second. I'm not going to lie. There is one shit food that's entered in my house over this pandemic. Cheese nips. I don't know why. They're really good. But anyway, long story short, that entered into my house. But if you eat too much shit food, you're going to have a shitty body. That's just how it is, okay? If you eat great food and healthy food, you're going to have a physical body that's in good shape. And if you exercise, you're going to have a great body. And you know what? You're going to have a different physiological response. So people who have, it's the same thing. If you're on this call or if you're in this pandemic, we're seeing a very big divide. And this is all about mindset, right? So I'm seeing it right away. If you're a person who is a doom and gloomer, and that's what you repeatedly look at, and that's what you repeatedly show, then you know what? You are what you repeatedly do. Aristotle wasn't lying. So we know that at a deep level, if you are what you repeatedly do, it creates what we're patterns. Okay, we're patterns. And that's exactly what's showing up. The people and that's the difference. When I wake up in the morning, I look and I go, this is an opportunity. This is a great opportunity for a lot of people. It's not a fun opportunity, but it is definitely a great opportunity. So we know that at a deep level, like I said, we create patterns by doing things repetitively. And I can tell you that there's been a lot of research that looks at our patterns and how they become unconscious, how we continually do the same thing over and over and over again. And pretty soon, it just goes on autopilot. So rather than thinking about doing something, your unconscious mind actually kicks in, and you just begin to do it like you wake up in the morning and you have your routine. That's exactly, at some point, you had to establish the routine of your life that you're living right now. At some point, if you're sitting there and you're in a pandemic right now, which I believe everybody on this call is, at some point, what is showing up is something that you've created because it's a routine. Okay, we are just a series of patterns that we run neurolinguistically in our programming, and what we refer to that as something Richard Bandler, he's the creator of NLP, he calls this a pattern interrupt. If you want to change where you are, understand that we are just a series of patterns that we have created based on things that we have, repetitively done. And if we want to change it, we need to change the pattern. That's it. Like, it's so easy. People ask me all the time, they're just like, gosh, I wish I understood neurosciences like you do. I'm like, no. All you have to understand is that it's a pattern. When I do a call, so I'm going to do a call today at 12 o'clock, like I said, for the Hallmark Group. And you know what? I guarantee you, I'll get a ton of messages after with people telling me, you changed my mindset. Oh my gosh, I'm in a different pattern. I'm in a different place, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, yeah, like it's because somebody showed you an idea or gave you something other than the shitty stuff that's in your head right now. Somebody's putting something better in there, which our clients hear it all the time. So they're repetitively hearing a different pattern from us in our coaching company. And what ends up happening is that they're not stuck in their old patterns. We're reprogramming their pattern. And, I was talking to Peggy Hill last night, and she was actually asking me all about, how is it that we're keeping people going? What is the skill? What is the technique? And I said, it's just pattern interrupt. We know that we're a series of patterns that we run in our programming. And like I said, Richard Bandler is the creator of NLP. Okay, so he says a pattern interrupt is at the core of teachings of neuro-linguistic programming. So you're looking for this pattern that the person's running. So if you're on this call and you're wondering, okay, what kind of patterns I have, I'll just kind of explain it more. Overall, if you're living your life and you're happy, okay, and you're happy, you're living it, you're running a pattern that creates happiness and creates joy. That's a great pattern. Okay. Now, I'm not talking about, hacking into that pattern. I'm talking about hacking into the patterns today that are derailing you guys. So my patterns that I do is happiness, joy, and good patterns. You know what? And I really believe you're going to hear me refer to this more and more. I believe we're in a kindness economy right now. I'm labeling it as a kindness economy until somebody comes out, creates a book, and takes that. I beat you to it. Anyway, we've got it on recording. But here's the thing. I wake up in the morning. I live my life. I'm happy with my life. No matter what gets thrown at me, there's always something good. So my patterns, the pattern that I continually run is a pattern of energy. It's a pattern of happiness. It's a good friggin' pattern. So no matter what hits I take, I know my patterns. Now, the ones that derail your patterns, what we see often in coaching and what we're seeing a lot right now is that there's patterns that are derailing people from their businesses. And that's really disturbing. Or they're patterns that are derailing them because they're not used to working at home, or they're not used to having 16 kids around them, or the stress, or the doom and gloom. Okay? And those bad patterns, so those derailing patterns, as I refer to them, they're pulling you away from achieving what you really want to achieve. And overall, all these years, the things that we've been coaching on, it boils down to one thing. You want to be happy and you want to have a happy career. You want to be happy in your health, you want to be happy in your fitness, and you want to be happy in your relationships. Yet we're running patterns that are opposite of what we should be doing to achieve happiness in our life. So for example, my coach was a varsity athlete, and he became really super obese, and he used all the techniques. And so when we were coaching on NLP, it was really easy for him to coach me on that as well, because I got really out of shape. I mean, I got lots of proof on that one. I lived it. Anyway, and I used to be really healthy, which was a different thing for me, is to kind of go into that whole different pattern that I had. So using all the NLP techniques, and people have asked me, how did I lose all the weight? I focused a lot on NLP. I've been facing down on the path wondering, what the hell do I, sorry for using that language, what the hell do I do to, what have I done to deserve being at this point in my life? I'm like, what happened? How did I gain all that weight? How did my mindset get to the point? What pattern did I freaking create that I ended up ballooning? And I'm not even lying. I'm being very vulnerable, because this is a mindset call and there's no reason to hide it. I mean, you can hide it. I have the pictures. So I have the proof. I have it. So anyway, the point is I worked on my mindset, going, what is the pattern? So I've been facing down that path going, how did I get there? And so it doesn't matter if you learn all this stuff at this point in your life too. You've got to practice these things. And so what I found is I was running a pattern over and over and over again that was eating unhealthy food. And that was doing things that led to being unhealthy, okay? And that's the pattern that would just run, meaning it was a habit, like we talked about just at the beginning of the call. It's the same thing in business, no different. If you're not achieving what you want to achieve right now, remember what NLP really is it's the practice of saying somebody else is having success in business or their personal life or whatever. How did they do it? Everybody looks at the solutions. They start going, oh, there's got to be a 10-day, thing, or a 16-week diet or something like that. No. It's really just about what pattern is appearing right now that you've had before, okay? So that has created habits that keep going and going, okay? That's important. And now the patterns were just running. If I was living right, if I was like really living right, you have to ask yourself, how many of you eat something, and as you're putting it into your mouth, you're sitting there going, I shouldn't eat this. And then you take the next bite. And I'm using this as an example because you can bring it metaphorically, you can bring it into business. Okay. So if you're sitting there, and it's the same thing, if you're like, oh, I should be lead generating today. And then you know it, so it's inside, and you're going, and you're sitting there, and you're making that decision. You're right in front of your computer, and you're going, I should really make about 20 calls right now, and you're like, but I really shouldn't watch Netflix. And then all of a sudden, you make the decision to watch Netflix instead of lead generating. Or deep down inside, okay, I shouldn't be going into this, into this pattern because I'm going to be miserable, and yet you go and you do it. And that's the thing, right? So if you're sitting there going, oh, I should really not take a bite of this, I really shouldn't, I'm going to be miserable. Okay, no problem, but then you do it anyway, okay? If you know you should be lead generating, and then you're sitting there and you're going, I'm just going to take a break and watch Netflix. Boom. I know if I don't respond to an email by 9 o'clock at night, the chance of me responding to that email later is about slim to none. Okay, so I know my patterns, but I do them anyway, right? So I'm like, holy smokes. Deep down inside, if you know you shouldn't do it, and you do it anyway. So you keep going, and you're doing the same thing over and over again. So if you're seeing that happen in a pandemic right now, where maybe you're overeating a little bit, or maybe you're not lead generating, or maybe you're fearing and gloom and doom, if you keep going and doing the same thing over and over again, but you know it's wrong, it's not a bad thing. So I want to find is that you need to have a little bit of a hack. So here's how pattern recognition works for you guys. If you wake up one day and you look back at the previous year and you go, wow, last year, man, I was a real jerk, and you sit there and I'm not saying you are, okay? Or if you look at last year and you reflect back and you sit there and you go, I could have been really much better. I could have had a better business. Now, a lot of you are going to look at this on the pandemic side. You're going to look at this many months later and you're going to have that feeling. You're going to wake up one day and you're going to look back and you're going to go, I could have done this. I could have done that. I could have been better. I didn't handle this the right way. I could have done that, blah, blah, blah. I could have done a better job. I could have been a nicer person. I could have helped more businesses. I could have not eaten. I could have really disciplined and leaned in and had a healthier life instead of having one where I'm eating, Cracker Jacks for breakfast, whatever the case is. Okay. When you wake up, okay, and you're at the end of running a pattern, you're right at the tail end of running the pattern. Okay. So that's important. I want you to know that. What I mean by you waking up one day and you're at the end of running your pattern and you're at the tail end of running a pattern, if you look back and you still haven't found that real pattern yet, then what happens is you wake up, you're in the middle of running a pattern, and you know that you're running a pattern. Okay, so looking back is different than being in it. So if you know you should be lead generating, or you know you shouldn't be eating bad food, and you're gaining weight during this whole thing, or your business isn't doing what it should be doing, and you're recognizing that in the middle of this pattern, then you know what? You should get rid of it. You know you need to get rid of it, and you wake up in the middle of it and you go, wow, I am not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I am keeping eating pies or donuts or whatever, and you keep going into the jump. The good news about that is you're awake now. That means you're aware of your pattern. The worst thing that could happen is people right now who are in the middle of a pattern that they can't see, because that is really hard as a coach. It's very difficult. If somebody doesn't see that they're eating really bad right now, and that is going to continue for them, and they're in the middle of it, and they're going to wait till they're at the end of the pattern, then it's not very effective for us as coaches. We've got to really have somebody who says, hey, I'm in the middle of eating really bad. I'm aware that I'm making really bad choices, and yet I'm still making those choices. That's like the hallelujah moment. That's the moment that you got to celebrate and go, you know what? You're in the middle of a pattern, and that's totally okay. That's where I want you to be. Same thing with building a business. You know what? When we see people on the coaching calls, I'm like, okay, if they're not, like our coaching clients go, oh my God, you're going to get so pissed if we don't do our work. I'm like, I don't look for you I'm not pissed off if you don't do what you're supposed to be doing. I just want to know, do you recognize you should be doing something different? Do you know that you should be lead generating right now? Do you understand that you should be making phone calls right now and you shouldn't be organizing your closet because you're a business owner? If somebody doesn't understand that, they're like, and they come to us and they go, no, I think I'm doing the right thing. I think I'm legitimately doing the right thing. I'm cleaning my closets. I'm doing stuff, and I'm showing the world, and I'm baking cookies and all this stuff. And I'm going, okay, so that person has not had the awakening moment. Okay, they don't have recognition. All right, so they're going to wait until they're at the end of this before they run the pattern, and they're going to wake up and they're going to go, uh-oh, I could have done different things. They can still fix their pattern at that point, but it's too late to fix it in the moment. So what we're talking about right now is if you know that there's something that needs to be fixed and you're continually doing it, that is a breakthrough. That right there is a breakthrough in NLP world. We're very happy that you have that. Okay, so when you wake up, and again, if you're about to say something negative, if you're about to blow up your kids, all that kind of stuff that's happening, again, it's important if you realize it's there. So anyway, what ends up, sorry, I just unmuted everybody. We beat ourselves up in the, my mistake. We beat ourselves up in those moments. And as a coach, it's really hard for me to hear you guys do that. And I think actually you should celebrate the moment. Okay, so I want you to stop and think about it for a moment. You should actually celebrate the moment, not because you're about to eat a whole pie, or not because you're not lead generating. You should celebrate because you have awareness. The farther you're ahead than most of the people that are out there when you have awareness is because most people don't even have the awareness that there's a pattern that they're running. They're aware of this finger, this thing, and they're willing to point it at other people rather than take responsibility for themselves. And that is a dangerous spot for people to be in. As an NLP coach, when I'm reading Facebook and stuff like that, and I see one agent shame another agent, for example, saying, "Oh, you shouldn't be lead generating. You shouldn't be lead generating." That is a person who legitimately has no awareness at all. Okay, they don't have any awareness that they're running a specific pattern and they're pointing fingers at other people rather than taking responsibility for themselves. And there was a great example in the past few weeks. Somebody that I really like, I think this person is really great. They pointed and shamed a lot of realtors, and then within 24 hours, realtors for sure still building businesses during this time frame, and then they turned it around. Within 24 hours, they were applying for social assistance, and deferral mortgage payments. And there's nothing wrong with that. That person needed a lot of help. And I agree with that. But that person isn't recognizing something very important in the NLP world. They're not recognizing that they have a pattern that they're not leading, they're not building their business, and they're not even aware of it. And they're going to look back 3 months from now and go, "Uh-oh, why didn't I do that?" And that's when that pattern is only going to become visible to that person. And my whole job is to say, can you be aware of the patterns that you're running right now? And that's why you should celebrate it. If you know you're overeating right now and you're aware of it, excuse my language, but fuck yeah, that's good. That's really good. So that's excellent. I'm very happy for you because that is massive awareness. That is the number one breakthrough that you're going to have. If you're aware that you're getting cranky and you're not getting enough sleep, that's a pattern you've created. You're giving yourself lack of sleep, so we got to fix the pattern. If you're aware and you're going, "Oh my God, everybody's pivoting virtually," and instead of pointing the finger at everybody and going, "You guys are crazy," aware, it's your pattern that you have to change. Don't worry about everybody else's, okay? Just focus on yours. So celebrate the fact that you notice it, because when you wake up the next morning and you sit there and go, "This is something that I do, I'm alive, this is something I do over and over and over again. This is something I do in my job. This is something I do in my health. Wait a minute, maybe this is about me," right? And that's what you want to see, is you want to wake up and you want to see, okay, it's okay to be in the pattern, but understand it's about you. It's about the changes that begin with you. And, again, I'm not a doctor, so I can't, that is nothing, that I can sort of fix if there's something bigger that's going on with you. But understand, it begins with you. It's got to start with you. Every pattern begins with you because you're giving your brain the choice. You're giving your brain the filters. And so it's got to start to change with you as well. So when you recognize your pattern, you understand that this is a pattern that you run, and you've been running this pattern. You got to think grateful for recognizing it, and then ask yourself, how do I break the pattern? Right? Now that's what you have, that's the awareness of the pattern. Now that you have it clear what pattern that you're running, the next thing you want to do is break it. So again, what does it take to break it? If it's baggage, meaning if it's things that, that you talk about when you're a kid, maybe you haven't succeeded before, or maybe, I have a coaching client that I absolutely adore. And like me, they've been through so much stuff. And so for me, for example, a lot of you guys know, and I'm sharing this personally, a lot of you guys know that when my family passed away, I was homeless and lost everything. And there's been 2 moments in my life where I lost everything. That was one of them. And that was one of the most scariest moments of my life. So when we see things like a pandemic hit, it can trigger, if I wasn't aware, it can trigger old baggage that I might be carrying around about losing everything, about being homeless. It could trigger that. That is a legitimate trigger. For this one client I have, it's triggered it for him. He spent his whole life in and out of hospitals. He's got a very, very weak immune system, and he's terrified. So he's trying to operate a business, and he's gone through this. The cool thing about him is he's in the middle of, he recognizes it. He has full awareness of this pattern, which means we can help him. And by the way, he texted me yesterday saying, You know what? Totally aware, rocking it, killing it. So that's the things is you have to look for baggage first. Are you carrying around baggage, about your mental and emotional health and releasing and just kind of looking at that and going, if I am, and we are going to do another call. So next week I'm going to do a call on NLP baggage, how to release baggage. And I'm going to share some actual real NLP techniques that we use to release baggage and breaking patterns. Now is not the time because you got to be really focused and it's a very private call. So the point is that if you have baggage though, think about it. If you're not lead generating, and you're sitting there because in your head you're going, okay, I'm not lead generating, I should be lead generating. That's great, again, but are you not lead generating because you have baggage, because you've always hated lead generation, or you've sucked at lead generation for the past 2 years and you're carrying that baggage around? Okay, you got to release that baggage, and that's the most important thing. Okay, so that's very, very important. And you can find other things, but sometimes, guys, also, if you can break the baggage, sometimes the pattern is just a behavior. Okay, so maybe it's the state of your emotions are going down. Okay, is it a behavior or your emotions just really run down? That's really all you have to look at, is that if it's your emotions and your emotions are running down, then understand sometimes your mind just goes down a negative path. So all you have to do, there's a thing we call in NLP that's called reframing. And what we do when we reframe is we just change our perspective on something. So those of you who want to know what reframing in NLP is, it's changing a perspective. So I'll give you an example. When my mom died, a lot of people sat back and, whenever I speak, when I was speaking with Grant Cardone last year, one of the things that, that he talked about and we talked about together is the difference of perspective. And in NLP, if you want to reframe something, like there's so many people, and I said it at Grant Cardone's event, I said, look, when my mom died, a lot of people, my heart broke. It was terrible. It was the worst thing that I could possibly go through. It was painful. It was just terrible. And I will never forget that. My heart still, it's been well over 20 years, and my heart is just always going to be broken because of that. But the truth is that my perspective is not about living in that moment. My perspective is this. Some people have, they live their whole life regretting things like that. Why didn't my mom live longer? Why was I homeless? Why, never see me get married, never see kids, never see this, never see that. My life would have been different. Why couldn't she be around? Gosh, I really need her now. I mean, I could live that perspective, or I could live a perspective and say, some people I know don't even like their parents. They don't even have good parents. Maybe their parents didn't love them. Maybe their parents didn't want them. I don't know. But I know that so many people don't get along with their parents or value them. And I had a great role model as a mom for over 16 years of my life. I will take a great mom for 16 years as opposed to a terrible one for 39 years. I mean, which one would I prefer? I would take any. That's the different perspective. So I look at that and I go, oh, okay, great. Those of you who know me know that I had cancer. I can't have children. It's not that I don't love children. I just can't have them. So I love children. Truth is, though, is that I can look at that and I can spend the rest of my life going, oh, my God, I'd be such a great mom. I don't know. I think I'd be a pretty cool mom. But at the end of the day, you know what? I look at the perspective and I don't get sad or depressed about it. I look at a perspective and I say, you know what? I never have to change a dirty diaper, ever. It's totally I'm the cool aunt. I don't have to do anything. I'm the one that gets to give the kids back at the end of the day and get them jacked up on sugar. So you know what? When you're in a moment like this, it's your perspective. How you see things is going to be how your outcome is. And if you are in a pattern right now where you're seeing things a certain way and you think it's a behavior or you're slipping down a slope of that, understand your perspective on how you see this situation that we're in right now is one of the most important things that you could see. And John Maxwell talked about it a few weeks ago. You can look at this as a global pandemic and freak yourself out. You can paralyze yourself. You can live in fear. You can have behaviors that'll paralyze you or patterns that you're creating right now that are going to impact you, and you're not going to notice it much later. So take a really good look and see what are the patterns that are showing up right now, and what's my perspective on this? So, for example, if you've gained, I have somebody who said that they're really upset because they've gained about 15, 20 pounds, and they're like, oh, my God, I'm eating everything. And I'm like, okay, you're in the middle of it. You recognize that. I'm like, that's a behavior. It's a pattern you don't want. That's a great thing. I said, now change your perspective on it, because they couldn't get working out. They're like, I'm just feeling like a slug. And I'm like, okay, I understand that. You're not a tree. Let's go. I'm like, what can we do here? And I'm like, first thing you need to do, what are successful people doing? So this is the number one thing you have to do. If you're sitting there and you recognize you have a pattern and you want to change your perspective on it, after you change your perspective on it, start looking for the people that are nailing it. So, for example, yesterday, my call with Chris. You know what? Yeah, he's nailing it right now. Is he going to nail it 2 weeks from now? I don't know. Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. But the point is, he's nailing it. Good. Who are the people? Follow him. See what he's doing. Patterns are patterns. They show up everywhere. If you see somebody who is sitting there going, hey, you know what? I'm my healthiest ever. Here's what I'm doing. What are they doing? Are they dialing into Movati every day? Are they TRXing? Are they running? Are they walking? Start looking for people who have patterns that you want. Okay, and success. Remember what I said at the beginning of the call. NLP is designed based on one person achieving success, and then they follow the patterns of the person who has success. It's no different than what we're doing in coaching. So when I talk about it today with the Hallmark Group, we're going to pile out a bunch of ideas for those guys. And the only reason why some of those ideas, like we get it all the time. I gave an idea yesterday to a team, and they went, oh my God. And I'm like, right, my perspective on how I saw this opportunity was entirely different than somebody else's. And I'm like, that's exactly how we work on it. Is like, follow the patterns of successful people. And when you see what somebody's achieving, if you see somebody who's baking cookies every single day on Facebook, chances are that person is not necessarily the one you want to follow if you're trying to live a healthier lifestyle. So, I try to follow people who have really good patterns. I block people who don't have really good patterns, and I'm making sure what's going into my head is really important. So perspective is the number one thing that I want you guys to really think about. How you choose to see things and how you choose to emulate this is what's going to achieve your success in the end. If you're looking around going, you know what, nobody's going to get listings. Nobody can sell a virtual house. Nobody can do it. If that's the pattern that you choose to live in and you don't know that that's the wrong pattern, and you're resisting it, you will see that pattern later. And the chances are is that your patterns, you're seeing everybody who supports that mindset you're seeing. And and you're that person who's pointing your finger at everybody going, nobody can do virtual, nobody can do virtual, nobody can do virtual. We're in the moment right now where the people who are going to achieve the most success are saying, look, NLP is this. If one person is succeeding getting listings and selling them virtually right now, then it is possible, which means they have a different pattern than you have. And you need to look at that pattern and you need to discuss it and say, reach out and break your own. Change your perspective. Okay, that's the most important thing. Patterns can be just a behavior. It can be baggage that you're carrying on from before, and it can be your perspective. Most of the time, it's perspective. So what you have to do is you have to learn how to anchor stuff too. And we talk about that in NLP a lot. How do you anchor? Tony Robbins talks about anchoring. And he says, when he goes on stage, and Tony Robbins just goes on stage and he starts talking about anchoring. And he goes, he has this thing where he claps his hand really loud and before he goes on stage and he's like, bam, and he says something. And it freaked me out. So I've kind of blocked it out of my head. But anyway, so he has this pattern where he does that. Grant Cardone has an anchoring pattern before he goes on stage. My anchoring pattern is listening to crazy ass music in the morning and just really just anchoring myself and going, okay, I'm going to start my day. Boom. I get hit, like I said, I get hit hard too, guys. Like I get hit with all the stuff that's happening. I'm not living in an alter reality than people. I'm not. I just choose is that I'm seeing success with other people in other areas. So I know in my brain, I've programmed myself that if somebody is achieving success in this market, in this type of environment, in this type of lifestyle, you know what? Guess what? It's possible. So why am I going to focus on having patterns otherwise? I need to reprogram my brain and look at the patterns and drop the baggage. And number one thing, like I said, it starts with perspective, how you see things. Then it goes into how you're anchoring that. Are you getting your anchor in? And an anchor, like I said, guys, is something that you're doing to remind yourself that you want to stay in this positive pattern. Okay, you want to stay in that mindset. So you hear people say an anchor can be having an elastic around your wrist. and you can pull the elastic around your wrist and it snaps and boom. That's an anchor. It's just boom. It's an anchor. It's a painful anchor, but whatever. It's an anchor that will remind you, boom, you're falling into a pattern you don't want to fall into. Boom, go. So you can have different anchoring things, and if you want to look up NLP anchoring, that's a really good one to look at. You can find tons of webinars and stuff like that, and we're going to talk about anchors in 2 weeks from now. Next week is going to be behavioral changes and whatnot and dropping baggage, which is really good. So sometimes the pattern in your mind is going down a negative path, so you need to reframe it, okay? And you need to switch your perspective on something. So if you find that you're going down a negative path in any area, again, remember, celebrate that you know that you're going through it. You know, like I said, a lot of our clients will come to the table and they'll be like, oh, you're going to be so pissed. You know what? Today I'm having a really bad day. Oh my God, that's great. Let me know. The worst thing is not achieving and not recognizing when you're in it. That's the worst thing. So remember, it's very, very important. If you want to reframe, switch your perspective on something. Look at it differently. Ask yourself different questions. What is the opportunity here? What do I feel good about? How do I want to look on the other side of this? Am I doing the right things right now? Change your perspective. If you're seeing only doom and gloom in this, I had somebody send me, just so you guys know, I had somebody send me a message 2 weeks ago. And it was a really amazing message. I don't think I've been called so many names in my life. But anyway, this is not from a client. This is somebody that said that they thought I was the most terrible person in the world because I'm coaching realtors on how to succeed in a market like this. And I'm like, okay, great. But I understand that's a person's perspective. And that's that finger wagging person, right? They don't recognize that they're in a really messed up pattern. So they're coming to me and they're going to make me wrong to make them right. And I'm like, that's totally cool. I'm like, that's totally fine. So I let the person, just talk about it. And I said, perspective wise, I said, I flipped the perspective. I said, I want you to answer a couple questions. And he says, okay, what is it? I said, first thing I want to ask you is, do you think that anybody predicted that we were going to be in this situation? He says, well, no, of course not. I said, right. Do you think that there's any possibility that people are going to be homeless because they sold their houses and now they need to buy a house and they didn't see this happening? He says, well, yeah. And I said, okay, do you think that there's a reason why maybe we were made essential services? Well, yeah. And I said, okay, do you think that there's any households right now, I said, that maybe have a different perspective? Maybe there's abusive parents there and there's children in that household, and that household, like, one of the spouses says, this is an abusive arrangement, I need to get out of it because the stress level is just terrible right now. And he says, well, yeah, I guess. I never thought of that. I said, exactly. So who do you want to help them? If every realtor shut down their doors and shut down their business, what would you like us to do with that household? What would you like us to do with the people that are going to move? Should they, just go to the Salvation Army? Like, I'm not sure what you'd like us to do with them. And he just kind of was silent. And I said, okay. I said, please change your perspective. Do I agree that people should be out pimping out deals and things like that? No, we should be respecting essential services. However, I said, also as small business owners, I said, do not attack us because we are an essential service, which means there's value to us. Anyway, the point is we changed his perspective. And the problem was he didn't realize he had a pattern. He was in the pattern right there. It took me less than 8 minutes on the phone with this person to really calm him down, change his mind. And you know what? We got an email from him about a week later just saying, you know what? I just have to apologize. You're right. And I've realized this. And he's really brought his business back on track. And I'm really proud of him. So you have to learn how to control your state, the state you're in. So I could have lost my marbles on that person. And by the way, everybody knows I have the ability to lose my marbles because I've done it before in the past. All the NLP coaching and all the NLP training I did was actually because of that, is that I really wanted to learn how to control the states that I was in. How do I control when I'm really pissed off? How do I control when I'm really happy about something? Okay, so it's very important. So sometimes your pattern goes down that negative path. Change your perspective, recognize the pattern, celebrate the pattern when you find it, and ask yourself, what is that? What is it that will interrupt this pattern and will break the pattern at the point where it goes wrong? When am I going to break the pattern so that it can begin to create a new pattern and I can begin to create something new in my life? And that's what all of us have to do. You just have to do it. So if you're willing to take that step and have that courage to do it, because again, I'm going to point out, facing yourself and realizing that these patterns that you're running are you and they're nobody else, it takes massive courage. It takes courage, and you have to be able to step up to that and be able to sit there and go, this is all about me. And these patterns that you're running are you. They're nobody else. Okay, so when you sit there and you say, now I have the ability to see that this is something that I'm doing, and how can I begin to gain a deeper level of control over it? How do I begin to take control over my life and my patterns? And now that I have the ability to see it and how I'm doing, I can get a deeper control over it. So if I want to take control over my life, you can't have your mind change unless you know what it is that you've got to change. So you can't hack into your mind if you don't know. And my coaches always tell me that until you can't hack your mind until you know what it is that you've got to hack. So you have to go in there, think the happier thoughts. And if that's not what the problem is, then you have to dig deeper. And we have to look at that, because sometimes your patterns, by the way, are about forgiveness. Whatever it is you find in your patterns, you break free from it when you find out what that pattern is. And I touched just for a second before I wrap it up, guys, is I touched on forgiveness. And what I mean by forgiveness is a lot of things. Is that, I said to you at the beginning of this call that there's a couple coaches out there that are taking my content now that I'm sharing it publicly, and they're using it, and they're making it their own and stuff like that. And you know what? That can create a pattern that's not good for me. So I recognize when I'm in that pattern, not when I'm out of the pattern. I need to recognize when I'm in that pattern, and I need to practice forgiveness. And for me, that's what it's all about. I know that I need to forgive sometimes, and I need to see that sometimes people don't know how to navigate. And the bigger picture is that even if they are taking the stuff and they're sharing it, is it making a difference in people's lives? And it is. So do I mind? Sure. I don't think it's the nicest thing. I'm a human being. I'm not a robot. Like, let's get real. I still get hurt. I still have happiness, and I still have sadness. But one of the most important things is I can give forgiveness in the moment. And that's a pattern I chose. I chose to look at a perspective that's different. I'm not going to get pissed off. I look at it differently. And I think, okay, you know what? This is a time of kindness. This is a time where I have to help people, and I have to understand that that's okay. That's their way of helping people, and they don't have the same thinking patterns as me. So I'm okay if they take my stuff and they share it and they help it. And I'm okay if they don't say it's from me. You know what? It's forgiveness. I don't think this is the time where, again, if you're seeing a pattern where you're online and all you're doing is you're posting negative doom and gloom stuff about what the current situation is, and you know what? Again, I think that's a pattern you're in. Do you recognize it? Okay. Remember, the biggest thing that you have to recognize is when you're in the pattern. Okay. So you look about facing reality, understanding it's you, getting the courage to be able to step up and sit there again, like I said, and say, this is about me, and I have the ability to see something that I'm doing currently. Am I resisting building my business? Is my perspective that everything is crashing and dying? How am I seeing things, and how do I choose to improve them? So I want to leave you guys with that. This is just the introductory to it. It gives you a little bit of stuff that you need to look at. And I want to really encourage you guys that your NLP starts with you understanding if somebody else is experiencing success with something, and then in a moment like this, whether it's fitness, whether it's attitude, whether it's mindset, whether it's sales, whatever it is, if somebody is seeing success in this time frame, then understand that you can alter your patterns to have the same successes they're having. You are no different than anybody else. How you see things, and when I started this call with the immigrant story, it wraps itself back up. Somebody who isn't here, their perspective is very different than people who are here. Okay, it can be very different. Our perspective of how somebody might see how things are happening in Italy is different than maybe somebody who is in Italy. We all have different perspectives on how we're doing things. Your pattern is creating what's happening right now in every area of your life. So if you want to know how to fix it, you need to know what the pattern is that you're experiencing. Is it baggage? Is it emotions? Is it negativity? And then ask yourself, what is the perspective I'm seeing here? Is it positive? Am I literally sitting there going, I can get out of this side with probably 100 new listings, or I can have 100 new clients when this is done, because my perspective is there's 100 people that probably need my help right now. Or is your perspective and your pattern, this is Armageddon. I need to lock down. I need to go in a corner. I need to my business is going to die and the world is going to crash and everybody's going to lose everything. Your perspective is very different, and how you see that pattern in the moment, you don't want to wait till you're on the end of it. You want to nip that in the butt right now. And again, we're going to do more series on NLP. We're going to talk about baggage release. We're going to talk about patterns. We're going to talk about anchoring. This is just a good little icing on the cake to say that before you continue on with these type of sessions with me, I want you to really look and say, when I do NLP one-on-one coaching, this is what I talk about. Recognize your pattern first. recognize what's happening, make the decision to fix it, and then we're going to continue on next week with baggage releases, anchoring, and all those techniques. So I hope you guys got a lot of value into this. I know it's a different type of coaching for a lot of you. So NLP coaching is mindset coaching. And again, remember, if other people are experiencing success in an area that you want to be successful in, then understand it's possible. And the only thing stopping you is you. So don't point the finger at anybody else. Point it at yourself. Recognize the pattern. And then that's the win. And then we can fix it. All right? So I will update you on the next call for next week later. Stay tuned for it. And again, thanks for being here, guys. And remember, change your perspective and you'll change the way things are happening in your life. We'll talk to you later. Bye, everyone.